Loren Ragland is a licensed psychotherapist and is the owner of Loren Ragland Therapy in Columbus, Ohio. I am so excited to speak with her today because she specifically focuses on areas that are so relevant to my listeners: anxiety, depression, college, mental health, and life transitions. So, welcome, Loren, to the Independence Lab.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here today.
So, tell me, Loren, how did you decide to get into psychotherapy? And then tell us about your college career.
Yeah, so I graduated with a bachelor's degree in clinical psychology from the Ohio State University. I really love human behavior, and I know that human behavior is reflective of the mind, how we think, our belief systems, and everybody's different. So it just fascinated me to really understand, what prompts us to do the things that we do, our motivations, our drive, et cetera. So that's really what ushered me into the field.
Yeah. So, what was required to become a psychotherapist?
Well, it was exposing myself to diverse demographics, working with children, adults, understanding community mental health, understanding the clinical side of things, really just immersing myself in the community. I think that gave me a really good understanding of what I would be working with in the future. And things just kind of, took off from there.
And if somebody wanted to go into this field, they obviously have to have an undergrad. Do they have to go to graduate school to get what is required?
So you do 4 years, and every state is a little bit different with their licensing. But I did 4 years at Ohio State. I took a year off and just kind of, figured out what exactly I wanted and what population I wanted to work with. And at that time, you go for graduate school, which is about 2 years, again, depending on the state and the requirements. And then you have to take a licensing exam in conjunction with a year of internship work. So I did my internship with Johns Hopkins University and just kind of loved the adult mental health piece. And that's really where I was like, oh, this is where I want to go. So
Amazing. Okay. And did you always own your own practice, or did you practice with somebody else first? What did your career actually look like, year to year?
right. So it's been a very interesting journey. No, I did not start off with my own practice. I didn't even have the idea to do a private practice. I actually started off in community mental health, which can be very challenging for some. Some have a heart for it, and some it can be very challenging. So I actually went into people's homes and conducted therapy there. I did that for several years, but I realized that that really wasn't for me. And then I took a couple years off with my parenting gap. When I got back into the work field, I decided to work with the elderly population and try that out. So I was at a skilled nursing facility. Again, great experience, just wasn't really my niche. That next, I worked in a psychiatric hospital. And so I'm like, at that point, I was really getting into the population that I wanted to work with. I saw, high suicidality. I worked with those with major depressive disorder, anxiety disorders. At that time, I was working with adults and children, but that I specialized in and felt that working with adults would be where I could best serve others. So at that time, I'm like, let me take it a little bit further. And then I went into private practice, and I love the flexibility. I love just being able to work with clients in the way that serves them best, but I have a little bit more autonomy in what I'm doing. And so at that point, I decided to go into private practice for myself.
Amazing. That's so cool. And
Thank you.
if you were talking to a young woman who's considering a similar path, what would you say to them?
I would be open to the experience. I would say that you don't necessarily have to have it figured out right away. As you can see that I had a very interesting journey and I had to tap into various positions in order to really figure out what works best for me. The beauty in my degree is that you can work in an array of different employment positions, right? So I did skilled nursing facilities, I did the community mental health. You can do so much with the degree, and that's a beautiful thing. So if you don't like something and it doesn't work out, okay, try it for a year or two, and then you can move on and see what works better for you.
Yeah. And something that you said, be open to the experience. You don't have to have it all figured out. A lot of women in the age group that I'm speaking to, they're college or early in their careers, they feel this pressure to have it all figured out all together in their early 20s. But what would you say to somebody who feels maybe behind or lost at that stage in their life?
Yeah, I think having it all figured out is a myth. I think that certainty is a disease of the mind. You don't want to be completely certain all the time because that doesn't really give you the opportunity to expand and grow. It doesn't give you the opportunity to listen to yourself if you have everything figured out. So I would say, try something. And at that very moment, if it speaks to you, then great. And if it doesn't, figure out what works for you, what your skills are, what your strengths are, and take it step by step. You're not going to have it figured out at 20 something years old, as you shouldn't anyway. I'm in my 30s and I'm still learning things about myself even in my career. So it's a journey, and you embrace the journey and the process. You don't just focus on the destination, because that, I think, will limit you.
Yeah, I agree. I love that. Okay, so from somebody who studies the mind, I talk a lot about emotional intelligence here at the Independence Lab. So I'm curious, how do you define emotional intelligence?
Yeah, I think emotional intelligence is the capacity to understand your emotions, be aware of them, know what they mean, and be able to apply them as you're navigating this very unpredictable world. And I think for women in particular, emotions contribute to our intuition, and that is a very beautiful gift that we have as women. So, nurturing those emotions, nurturing the emotional resilience, and your ability to just be aware of how you feel, what you want, not be inundated, but with other people's perspectives and beliefs and opinions, listening to yourself in order to, create that journey and that path that you want for yourself. I think that's the best way to go for a woman.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that's, I think, something that's really, really difficult for women in that age group. And I saw on your website that you specifically work with college
Mhm.
aged people regarding mental health. Why did you end up choosing to work with them specifically? And what are some of the trends that you're seeing?
Yeah, I think that time frame is very, very important, because I think that women in particular, we're transitioning from that adolescent stage into early womanhood. And I think that we're continuously bombarded with various messages from society. So that point is where you really have to solidify your self-concept, what you believe to be true about yourself, how you want to navigate the world, how you want to show up in the world. And because you have all this freedom, it's like, what do I do with it? How do I design who I am as a woman? And so sometimes we need a little bit of help in facilitating our growth, and that's where I step in for the women that I serve. Now, as far as trends go, I'm seeing a lot. I see women that are now able to step into their autonomy and know what they want for themselves, not be pressured by society or the status quo of what they should be doing. And I think that that's a beautiful thing. There's more opportunities out there. There's more information out there. So women are really, going forward and doing what they want, and that's a great thing. I love to see it.
I've seen a lot of people who really resonate with the word overwhelmed, overthinking. There's just so much right
Yes.
at your fingertips
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
days. There's ChatGPT, there's TikTok, there's this, there's that. Everybody's talking. There's influencers online where
Mhm.
they're not getting day-to-day jobs. They're traveling the world and showing their pictures of these cool trips that they're on. Like there's just so much coming at people
Yes.
these days. And I feel like it's hard to, you know, I think it's hard for anybody, but somebody in this day and age to do what you're saying is like they get to know who they are, what they want, make their own path, and understand themselves completely. I feel like that is quite overwhelming
Yeah.
right now. Is that something that you're seeing?
Yes, absolutely. And I tell many of my clients to learn to silence the noise. Do not be afraid
Mm,
of solitude. And what I mean by that, I have to highlight positive solitude, because you don't want to isolate yourself, but you want to use
mhm.
that time to sit with yourself and, be able to listen to how you feel and ask yourself what you want. So that might mean staying off of social media, be mindful of the music that you're listening to or the influencers that you're following, because again, all of that is going to contribute to your subconscious. All of that is contributing to a self-concept, and you really want the most authentic self-concept. You want to be you. You don't want to be, an orchestration of what everyone else is telling you should be or what they think you should be. So positive solitude, being able to step away and silence the noise, I think is golden, and I don't think that we do that enough. So I would absolutely recommend being able to just sit with yourself and figure out what works best for you.
Do you have any exercises that you recommend for people for doing that?
I would say meditation is a beautiful thing. I would say spending time in nature, basics of self-care, making sure you are eating properly, sleeping, consuming, as I said, just what you're exposing yourself to, just being mindful and intentional with your time. The way in which you're spending your time, ask yourself, what is the purpose? What is my intention when I'm doing this? So is it bettering me? Is it helping me or is it harming me? And those simple questions I think are going to increase your emotional intelligence, your self-awareness. And then when you are that clear, pure vessel, you then can actually make decisions that are going to serve you and propel you forward.
Yeah. Okay, good. I think we all need to spend more time being quiet with ourselves or in nature, that's it's
Yeah.
easier said than done sometimes, but when
It
you make it a habit, it's
Mhm.
well worth it.
Absolutely.
Okay. You also list on your website that you help with life transitions.
Mhm.
So, in this case, you might be going from college into the workforce, or maybe you've moved to a new city, or maybe you are in your hometown and all of your friends have moved away to take jobs. There's a lot that can be transitioning
Yes.
during this period in your life.
Yes.
Why are life transitions so hard?
I think that people like predictability. I think change can be very difficult for some because you don't know what to anticipate. But the reality is that the same mechanics, the cognitive mechanics that we can use to be fearful or be worried, we can use those same mechanics to think that things will be great and it'll work out just fine. So I think just recognizing that, have a positive outlook on what is to come. And if you can have a positive outlook, well, at least try to have a neutral outlook. So, life is about change and change is equivalent to growth. And if you look at it in that perspective, in that lens, I think it makes it a little bit easier to transition into what life is bringing forward to you.
Yeah, I love having a positive outlook, but I think some people have an easier task of looking at things in a positive light than others. So, what are some things that people can do to maybe make that mindset shift?
hmm Well, I think visualizing what you want, I think is a great technique. Looking at, okay, what do I want for myself? What do I want this new chapter in my life to look like? And then how would I think in this new chapter or how would I conduct myself and behave? And I think that if you kind of focus on that versus on what could happen, you are like kind of redirecting your attention to what you want versus what you don't want.
Yep, absolutely. All right. So, all of these things,
Mhm.
transitions, changes in your life, it can bring a lot of feelings, right? And we've seen a lot of reports coming out lately that Gen Z is more depressed, they are more anxious,
Yeah.
they are less financially independent than previous
Mhm.
generations, and I think it just takes a toll on them.
Absolutely.
So, you know, that's just my opinion, but why do you think we are seeing more people in the Gen Z generation being more depressed, being more anxious, and what advice would you give to these women?
Yeah. Well, I think it goes back to what you mentioned earlier, Bran, as far as consumption and overindulgence in what is going on around us, right? So we have access to everything and anything that we want, and I think that kind of that creates a lot of anxiety. We are looking at AI versions of women, for example, and comparing ourselves, or we're looking at someone's wedding or someone's career, but the things that we're seeing, those are fabricated images. Those are the best of someone's circumstances. We're not seeing the reality. So I think that just because we have access to so much, although accessibility is a good thing, I think too much of anything can prove to be detrimental to some degree. So as far as what I would recommend, I would say just again being mindful of what you're consuming and how much you're consuming. Being present and not looking so much towards the future or focusing so much on the past, but what is right in front of me? What am I doing to enjoy or to take care of myself or to love those around me? And just keeping that disposition, I think would kind of help to stabilize as far as the mental well-being.
Yeah. And I feel like you'd be the right person to ask, at what point should somebody consider therapy?
Well, I think that therapy can be beneficial at any given time. I don't necessarily think you have to be in crisis. I think it's always good to have a third party and an objective person just to help facilitate, what you're experiencing. So it's really, there's never a bad time to do it. I think that it always can be beneficial for someone.
I agree with that. I don't think it has to be, well, I've reached this point in life, or this point where I'm tipped over and now I have to get therapy. I think it's beneficial for anybody at any point if they want to get to know themselves better and reflect.
Mhm.
Wonderful. Hey, you know what? I should have asked this earlier, but can you define psychotherapist? These things always confuse me, the different levels and who does what.
Sure. So I would say psychotherapist is really a generic term, and the word
Okay.
therapist is actually a generic term. So when you think of a
Mhm.
psychologist, typically in most states, that is someone with a PhD. Okay. A
Okay.
therapist can be any level. It can be it could be a PhD, or it can also be a master's level. So I am a master's level therapist. So it just really, semantics are, I mean, they're important, but you've got psychiatrists, psychologists, therapists, and there's a bunch. But ultimately, psychotherapist is just someone that works, cognitively with someone and providing mental health therapy.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. I always am confused by the different levels. Okay, good. Lauren, have you ever experienced imposter syndrome?
I'm going to be completely honest. I do not subscribe to that concept. And the
Okay,
reason
tell
I
me
do
more.
not subscribe to that, like my understanding of it is, you are in a position and then you have self-doubt and, you're
Mm.
questioning why you're in that position, or are your achievements valid or accurate. I don't subscribe to that. I think that, on average, it takes roughly 6 months for someone to be comfortable in a new employment position. That's the
Mhm.
learning curve, right? It might take you 6 months, it might take you 8 months, but ultimately, I think that if you lean into the idea of self-doubt, well, you're going to continue to perform in that way. So I would say, again, if you cannot be positive about your experiences, then at least be neutral. So, okay, I haven't become efficient or adept at this position right now. That doesn't mean I won't be better the next time or in a couple of months. So again, it's really just leaning into and understanding what you're believing in about yourself. And if you doubt that, then that is going to be reflective in your performance. So again, the way in which you behave and operate is reflective of your thought patterns. So reframe the way you're thinking about things. Understand that you may not get something right away. You might not, be perfect at something, but give yourself time. And, over that, you will see a difference in your performance.
Yeah, I learned this little technique of adding the word yet onto things, so I am not proficient in this yet, and it
Correct.
kind of takes it to at least that neutral level.
Correct. Yeah. Or even just, embracing the fact that you're just learning. No
Mhm.
one's proficient right away. So embrace the fact that it is a journey. It is a process for you to become better at what you're doing, or you haven't reached the achievements that you want to right now, but you'll get there. Figure out what you need to do and then execute versus leaning into the self-doubt or disbelief, because again, that is only going to diminish the possibility of you becoming better. So it's really a matter of what are you leaning into? What belief are you leaning into? So the imposter syndrome, I know it is a very trendy word, but there are just some things I just don't give light to. And I just encourage people to just be mindful of that.
I love that. Yes. All right. I'm going to make sure that that is how we refer to it from now on, if at all.
If at all.
Yeah, exactly. I love it. All right. I am curious, what is a small daily or weekly mental health practice that you can recommend for specifically building resilience? So somebody gets knocked down, how they get good at standing back up, because that is a huge part of emotional intelligence and it is going to be required as you enter the workforce or anything, really that you're doing. It's not going to go perfectly. You're going to get upset. You're going to be sad sometimes.
Yes.
How do you build that resilience?
I would say take each experience and look at it as if it is serving you. And what I mean by that is if you're experiencing something or if you have a setback, okay, ask yourself, what is this teaching me? What do I need to learn about myself so that I can take it and move it forward and use it as wisdom, apply it to the next venture or next experience that I have? So don't necessarily look at it as a setback, but more so like this is for me. Because things aren't going to make sense when you're in the midst of things, but, looking back at my career when I was 20 something years old and I was in community health, and, I remember driving up to my job and sitting in the car for 20 minutes, not wanting to go in because I was just like, this
Mhm.
is not for me, right? It did not make sense at the time, but looking back, it did. So it was a matter of, at that time, can I understand that this is not right for me? Can I stand in that? And can I be strong enough to step away? And so everything is serving you in some form or fashion, but you have to take the time to recognize it, evaluate it. And that's where that, emotional intelligence comes in, that intuition comes in, where I can listen to my needs and move accordingly.
This is for me. Yep. Gotta repeat over and over again, right?
Yeah, this is for me. This what is it serving? How is it serving me? So yes,
Yeah. Yeah. I think, making a decision is sometimes hard when you are feeling that overwhelmed feeling. If What I have learned though is that there is no wrong decision. You are not
correct.
going to make a wrong decision as long as you learn from it.
Absolutely.
So whether it's taking a job that is, well, you don't love this for a year or anything else, it's just simply like if you can learn from it, then it wasn't the wrong choice at the time.
Absolutely. Yeah, I fully agree. I think there is no wrong choice. You take an avenue, you learn from it, and you go forward with that. So
Hmm. Yeah. Loren, this has been fantastic. I feel like you have so much insight into the brains of the people that would be listening to this and can learn from it. If you could share anything from the work that you do with the, general people listening here. I know that therapy is custom and each person is going to get their own routines that will help them. But if there is something that you could take away and give to the college and early career listeners,
Mhm.
what would you say?
As simple and as profound as my response will be, I would just say relax and just allow it to be. Enjoy the process. That is something that I struggled with growing throughout my career. I always wanted to have the answers. I always wanted to have it figured out. But, just listen to what is inside of you. Take that step, one step at a time, and just allow things to unfold organically, is what I would say to that.
Okay. And my last question here is going to be a little bit similar, but I'm going to ask it anyways. If
Sure.
you could go back and give yourself one piece of advice for as a new graduate, what would that advice be?
I would say silence the noise and listen to myself. Again, there were times where I did not do that, and the results of that showed. So, everything you have and you need, you have within yourself. It's just a matter of trusting yourself, affirming who you are, acknowledging the self concept, designing who you want to be, and just taking the steps forward to create the journey that you want, the reality that you want for yourself. And you can't go wrong. You won't go wrong.
Wonderful. Well, Lauren, if people want to learn more about you and what you do, where can they go?
Of course. So my website, lorenraglandtherapy.com. I'm also on a few platforms, one of which psychologytoday.com. You can just type in my name, Loren Ragland. I can also be found on Therapy Den. Again, just type in my name, Loren Ragland, and you will find me there.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for doing this. Your insights are so helpful, and I know that it will be impactful for the people listening.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure being with you.